Over years of tireless work, Ethan had followed every command without question. His German shepherd, Rex, obeyed with the same unwavering precision. Until that October afternoon when every piece of equipment declared the rubble empty. What Rex refused to abandon down there turned out to be something no one could explain. A quiet, impossible survival wrapped in the presence of the Virgin Mary. Before we continue, share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let's see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary have reached. And if you haven't yet joined our family, subscribe now, because here, each day, we witness the tender love and mighty power of the Mother of God. Ethan was 35 and had spent most of his adult life working with rescue animals. From childhood, he had understood dogs in a way other people never quite did. He read their eyes, the tilt of an ear, the rhythm of a tail. When he joined the state emergency response team 10 years earlier, he knew he had found his calling. The work suited him. Long hours, high stakes, and the chance to bring someone home alive. Then came Rex. The puppy arrived at 8 weeks old, a German shepherd with coal-black fur and eyes that seemed to study everything at once. Ethan saw him in the kennel and felt the same certainty he had felt only a handful of times in his life. This one was different. Training began immediately and lasted 2 full years. Rex learned fast and never wavered. A whistle, a hand signal, a single word, Rex responded instantly and exactly. The rest of the team noticed it too. They started saying Ethan didn't need backup radios or extra sensors. He had Rex. Together they had pulled 6 people from collapsed structures, located 3 lost children in dense forest, and located 2 elderly hikers after dark in freezing rain. Every time Rex locked onto a scent, the outcome changed. Ethan trusted the dog more than he trusted the most expensive gear the department owned. That Tuesday morning began like any other shift. At 2:17 p.m. the call came through. An old 4-story apartment building in rural Delaware had pancaked into itself. No slow warning rumble like in the movies. Just a sudden roar, then dust so thick it blocked the sun. The building had stood for nearly 60 years. Tenants had complained for a long time. Hairline cracks spidered across load-bearing walls. At night, the structure groaned, sharp pops and long creaks that sounded like someone walking on the roof. Residents told the manager. The manager said old buildings settle, that the sounds were normal. People wanted to believe him. Moving costs money. Packing up a lifetime is exhausting. So they stayed. One tenant in apartment 203 noticed a fresh vertical crack that morning. Floor to ceiling, wide enough to slip a hand through. He called the office. The manager promised someone would look after lunch. Lunch never arrived. When Ethan and Rex reached the site, the scene looked like a war zone had been dropped in the middle of farmland. Concrete slabs lay at odd angles. Rebar twisted like wet spaghetti. A child's bicycle rested upside down on what used to be the 3rd-floor landing. Dust still hung in the air, coating lungs and eyes. Ethan knelt beside Rex and fastened the search harness. The dog's nostrils flared once, twice. His posture changed, head low, ears forward, body coiled. Ethan gave the command. Rex moved into the pile without hesitation. The first hours brought results. A 42-year-old woman from the ground floor, leg broken but conscious. An older couple from the 2nd floor, bruised and shaken but breathing. A 26-year-old man who had moved in only 3 weeks earlier, pinned under a fallen door but alert enough to call out. Each find felt like pushing back the darkness for a moment. Neighbors gathered behind the tape line. Rescuers asked the same questions over and over. Who else was home? Who lived on the upper floors? Answers came in fragments. Some people shook their heads. Others gave names, but no certainty. One woman, still wrapped in a blanket, spoke through chattering teeth. There was Margaret in 401. Older lady. Lives alone. I don't know if she was there today. Ethan wrote the name and apartment number on the back of his glove. Margaret. 4th floor. Maybe she had left early. Maybe she was visiting family. But maybe she had not. Search continued into the evening. Floodlights turned the site into a harsh white stage. Teams rotated so no one collapsed from fatigue. When the coordinator told Ethan his shift was over, he hesitated. Rex sat beside him, ears still pricked toward the rubble. Ethan finally nodded and walked to the rest tent. He lay down fully clothed. Rex curled against his legs. Sleep came in pieces. Every time Ethan closed his eyes, he saw the pile again. Tons of broken concrete hiding spaces no wider than a coffin. He woke before dawn, pulled on boots, and returned to the line. By the end of day 1, they had 7 survivors. 7 people who had walked out or been carried out. 7 reasons to keep going. But Margaret from apartment 401 had not appeared. No one had seen her leave that morning. No one had spoken to her since the night before. The young man from the 3rd floor remembered passing her in the stairwell. She carried 2 cloth grocery bags. He offered to help. She smiled and said no thank you. That was the last confirmed sighting. Ethan looked at Rex. The dog had not stopped working all day. He had not given a single false alert. If Margaret was still in there, Rex would know. The question was whether there was still time. The night after the first day felt endless. Floodlights carved sharp shadows across the pile. Generators hummed without pause. Teams swapped places every 4 hours so no one burned out completely. When the coordinator ordered Ethan to stand down, he almost argued. Rex sat at his side, eyes fixed on the rubble as though he could still smell something the rest of them had missed. Ethan finally walked to the tent. He dropped onto the cot without taking off his boots. Rex lay down across his feet, heavy and warm. Sleep refused to come properly. Every time Ethan drifted off, he heard the building falling again. The crack of rebar snapping, the wet crunch of concrete folding in on itself. He woke before first light, throat dry from dust, and returned to the line. Day 2 started the same way. Rex moved through the debris with the same focus he always showed. Nose low, tail steady, pausing only to mark a spot for the crew to check. They pulled 2 more people out before noon. A teenage girl from the 2nd floor who had sheltered under a table. A man in his 50s who had been trapped in the stairwell. Both dehydrated. Both alive. The numbers climbed to 9 survivors. But Margaret remained missing. Ethan kept asking. He asked the woman from the 1st floor again. He asked the young man who had seen her with the grocery bags. He asked anyone who would stop long enough to talk. Answers stayed vague. She kept to herself. She was quiet. I think she went to church on Tuesdays, but I'm not sure. No one could say for certain whether she had been inside when the collapse happened. The longer the uncertainty lasted, the heavier it sat in Ethan's chest. He pictured an 82-year-old woman alone on the top floor. Maybe reading, maybe praying, maybe simply waiting for the afternoon to pass. Then the floor dropped away. Survival statistics are cruel after the first day. Without water, a healthy adult might last 3 days under ideal conditions. Trapped in darkness, covered in dust, possibly injured, that window shrinks fast. By the 2nd afternoon, Ethan could feel the shift in the air. Conversations grew shorter. Eyes avoided the pile for longer stretches. People started saying things like, maybe she wasn't home, or maybe she left early for a doctor's appointment. Ethan did not want to hear it. He looked at Rex. The dog had not slowed down. If anything, he worked harder, circling back to sections already cleared, sniffing longer, pressing his nose into cracks no wider than a finger. Ethan trusted that instinct more than any thermal image or seismic reading. During a short water break, one of the younger rescuers spoke up. We've been over every accessible area twice. If she's in there, she's under something we can't reach yet. Ethan nodded once. Then we keep looking until we can reach it. The man hesitated. The odds. I know the odds, Ethan cut in. His voice stayed level. I also know Rex hasn't lied to me yet. The rescuer looked at the dog. Rex sat alert, ears up, waiting for the next command. The man shrugged and went back to work. As the sun dropped lower, the coordinator gathered the team again. He spoke plainly. The pace would continue, but they had to be realistic. Resources were not infinite. Other calls were coming in across the county. They could not stay on this site forever. Ethan listened without speaking. When the briefing ended, he walked Rex to the edge of the pile and knelt in front of him. "One more good push tomorrow, partner," he said quietly. Rex pressed his head against Ethan's chest for a moment. The gesture felt like agreement. That night, Ethan lay awake longer than the night before. He thought about Margaret. He did not know her face. He did not know whether she liked tea or coffee, whether she kept a garden, whether she had grandchildren who called on Sundays. All he had was a name, an apartment number, and the faint hope that she was still breathing somewhere under all that weight. If she was there, every hour mattered. If she was not, they were chasing a ghost. Either way, he could not walk away yet. By the morning of day 3, the mood had changed. Hope thins out after 48 hours. People stop saying, "We're going to find her," and start saying, "We did everything we could." The equipment operators ran their scans again and again. Thermal cameras showed only cold concrete. Sound detectors picked up nothing but the wind moving through gaps. Seismic sensors stayed silent. Ethan stood beside the technician while the man studied the latest readout. "Still 0, the technician said. "No heat signature. No movement." Ethan looked at the screen. Then he looked at the rubble. Then he looked at Rex. The dog had not stopped scanning. He paced the same section of the pile over and over, nose working the air, body tense. Ethan turned to the coordinator. "One more full pass. Just Rex and me. No extra crew. If he doesn't indicate anything, I'll stand down." The coordinator studied him for a long moment. "You've got until sundown. After that we start wrapping." Ethan nodded. "Thank you." He clipped the harness back on Rex and stepped into the debris together. Day 3 arrived under a gray sky that refused to decide whether it would rain or simply stay heavy. The temperature had dropped overnight. Dust turned damp and clung to everything. The pile looked different in the flat morning light, more solid, more final. The mood on site had shifted noticeably. People spoke in lower voices. Movement slowed. The urgency that had driven the first 48 hours had worn thin. Everyone knew the numbers. After 72 hours, the chance of finding someone alive drops to almost nothing. The phrase "recovery phase" started appearing in quiet conversations. No one said it to Ethan directly. They did not have to. He felt it anyway. The equipment operators ran fresh scans at first light. Thermal cameras swept the pile in slow arcs and returned the same flat blue screen. No warm spots. No anomalies. Seismic microphones listened for the faintest tap or shuffle and heard only the low groan of settling debris. One technician shook his head as he packed up the monitor. "It's quiet, Ethan. Too quiet." Ethan stood beside the coordinator while the man reviewed the data. The coordinator rubbed his face with both hands. 3 days of little sleep showed in the lines around his eyes. "We're nearing the point where we have to transition priorities," he said. "You understand that?" "I understand," Ethan answered. "I'm asking for one more sweep. Full effort. Rex and me. If he gives nothing, I'll accept it." The coordinator looked past him at the dog. Rex sat perfectly still, watching the pile. His ears flicked toward every small sound, the clink of tools, the murmur of radio traffic, but his focus never left the debris. "You've never asked for special treatment before," the coordinator said. "I'm not asking for special treatment now. I'm asking to trust what's worked every other time." A long silence followed. The coordinator exhaled through his nose. "Until sundown. One pass. No extra manpower pulled from other sectors. If Rex doesn't hit, we start demobilizing tomorrow." Ethan nodded once. "Fair." He walked back to the pile with Rex at heel. The harness went on. The command came low and calm. Rex moved forward without hesitation. They started at the southwest corner and worked methodically northeast, the direction the collapse had folded the upper floors inward. Rex covered ground he had already covered twice. He sniffed longer in some places, circled back in others. His tail stayed level. No bark. No paw signal. No alert. Hours passed. The sun climbed, then began its slow descent. Dust coated Rex's muzzle and turned his black coat gray. Ethan's throat burned from the dry air. His legs ached from climbing over unstable slabs. Still they kept going. By late afternoon, Ethan felt the weight settle deeper. He sat on a broken section of wall and watched Rex work one last narrow gap between two massive concrete beams. The dog sniffed, paused, sniffed again. Nothing. Rex lifted his head and looked back at Ethan. Their eyes met. For the first time, Ethan thought he saw something like apology in the dog's expression. He reached out and rubbed behind Rex's ears. "You did your job, partner. You always do." Rex pressed against his leg for a moment, then lay down beside him. Ethan stared at the pile. The orange light of late day painted long shadows across the wreckage. He thought about Margaret again, 82 years old, alone, holding on for 4 days in a space no bigger than a closet, if she was even there. He tried to imagine her face. He tried to imagine her last thought before the building came down. He could not. The coordinator approached quietly. "We're calling it at dusk. Final briefing in 30. Ethan nodded without looking up. "I'll be there." The man lingered a second longer. "You gave her every chance anyone could give." Ethan did not answer. He kept his hand on Rex's head and watched the light fade. That night the tent felt smaller. Ethan lay on his back and stared at the canvas ceiling. Rex curled against his side, breathing slow and steady. Ethan's mind would not rest. He replayed every search, every corner Rex had checked, every time the dog had hesitated and then moved on. He thought about the name Margaret written on the back of his glove, ink now smudged from sweat and dust. He thought about the woman who might still be under there, waiting in silence for a sound that never came. He rolled onto his side and spoke quietly to Rex. "Tomorrow's it, boy. Last day. Last chance. Whatever happens, you've never let me down." Rex lifted his head, licked Ethan's wrist once, then settled again. Ethan closed his eyes. Sleep came in fragments. When morning broke on day 4, the sky had cleared. Cold sunlight cut sharp across the site. The coordinator called the full team together before anyone touched the pile. His voice carried over the low hum of generators. "Today is the final active search. We cover the northeast quadrant one last time, the heaviest impact zone. After this, we move to recovery protocols." Everyone clear. Heads nodded. No one argued. The coordinator looked at Ethan. "You and Rex take point on the northeast. Full support if you get a hit. Otherwise, we close at end of shift." Ethan met his eyes. Understood. He knelt beside Rex and fastened the harness one more time. The leather felt heavier today. "Let's go, partner," he said. One last time. Rex stood, shook himself once, and stepped toward the pile. The northeast quadrant looked worse in daylight than it had the night before. Massive concrete slabs lay stacked at impossible angles. Twisted rebar protruded like broken bones. The collapse had driven the upper floors downward and inward, creating a dense knot of wreckage that crews had barely touched. Heavy equipment could not reach most of it without risking further shifts. Ethan clipped the harness on Rex one last time. The leather felt familiar, worn smooth from years of use. He gave the command quietly. Rex stepped forward, nose already working the air. They started at the outer edge and moved inward. Rex covered ground with the same deliberate pace he always used. Sniff, pause, move on. No alert. No hesitation. Ethan followed close, watching every twitch of the dog's ears, every shift in posture. Minutes stretched into an hour. The sun climbed higher. Heat rose from the concrete. Dust worked its way into Ethan's eyes and throat. He kept going. Around 10:15, Rex froze. He had been sniffing along the base of a fallen load-bearing beam when his entire body stiffened. Ears forward, tail still, nose pressed hard against a narrow gap between two slabs. For several seconds, he did not move at all. Ethan felt the change instantly. "What is it, boy?" Rex began sniffing faster, short, intense bursts. His head swung left, right, then back to the same spot. Then he started digging. Paws scratched at the dirt and smaller rubble. Dust flew. Ethan called once. Rex, easy. The dog ignored him. Ethan stepped closer. Rex, hold. Rex kept digging. Faster now. Claws scraping concrete. A low growl mixed with sharp, urgent barks. Ethan's pulse rose. In 10 years together, Rex had never disobeyed a direct command. Never once. The nearest rescuer noticed the sound and jogged over. What's he got? I don't know yet, Ethan said. But he's not stopping. The technician with the thermal scanner hurried up. He swept the area. Nothing. Zero heat signature. No movement trace. Ethan looked at Rex. The dog barked again, loud, insistent, almost frantic. He pawed at the same spot over and over, refusing to leave. The coordinator arrived quickly. His face was tight. Ethan, what's happening? Rex is indicating right here. Strong alert. He's never done this before. The coordinator glanced at the technician. Equipment. Still nothing, the man answered. Cold. Silent. The coordinator studied the pile. 2 enormous slabs pinned the area. Moving anything could bring more down. This section was cleared twice. We've got no structural clearance to dig here. Ethan took a step forward. My dog doesn't false alert. In 10 years, he's never given me a wrong location. Look at him. Rex kept barking. His eyes locked on the gap. Every muscle strained toward it. The coordinator hesitated. He looked around. Several rescuers had gathered. Carlos, who had 23 years on the team. Maria, who had worked beside Ethan on 6 major calls. 2 younger men who had seen Rex work before. Carlos spoke first. I've seen dogs hit when the machines said no. Twice. Both times we pulled someone out alive. Maria nodded. If Ethan says Rex is sure, I'm staying. One of the younger men raised his hand. I'll help dig. Another stepped up. Me too. Half the team stood ready. The coordinator exhaled hard. We do this slow. Controlled. Any sign of instability, we stop immediately. No arguments. Ethan nodded. Understood. The coordinator called for the small excavator and manual tools. The first minutes felt endless. They moved loose debris by hand. Chunks of plaster, broken wood, a child's stuffed bear covered in gray dust. Rex stayed exactly where he had first stopped, barking every few seconds as if urging them on. 10 minutes and they hit solid concrete. The excavator arm lifted one slab a careful inch at a time. Everyone watched the pile for any shift. Nothing moved. 15 minutes. More rubble cleared. A bent metal chair frame. A cracked ceramic pot. A single woman's shoe. Ethan's arms burned. Sweat ran into his eyes. He kept working. Then it came. A faint scent drifted up through the dust. Roses. Clean, sweet, unmistakable. Ethan froze. There were no flowers anywhere near the site. No gardens. Only concrete and ruin. The smell lasted perhaps 10 seconds. Then it vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. But something changed inside Ethan. The doubt that had pressed on him for 3 days simply lifted. In its place came a calm certainty he could not explain. He took a deeper breath and returned to the work with steady hands. 20 minutes. One of the rescuers stopped abruptly. Hold, hold. Everyone froze. He pointed to a narrow space between 2 slabs. Something moved. I swear I saw it. Ethan leaned in. The gap was small, barely wide enough for an arm. He took the flashlight from Carlos and aimed it down. In the beam, deep in the shadow, a hand appeared. Thin, covered in dust. Fingers twitched once, weakly. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. There's someone alive here, he shouted. We've got a live find. The site erupted. The coordinator barked orders. Paramedics moved in. The excavator operator eased back. Everyone worked with new precision. Slow, careful, deliberate. One wrong move could collapse the pocket and end everything. Max lay down a few meters away. He had stopped barking. His job was finished. They removed one slab. Then another. Checked stability after every lift. An hour passed in tense increments. Finally, they opened enough space to see clearly. An elderly woman lay on her side in a tiny air pocket. White hair matted with dust. Face pale. Eyes closed. Breathing shallow, but present. Against her chest, she held a small statue of the Virgin Mary, about 8 inches tall, blue mantle, serene face, the kind kept on a home altar. Her arms cradled it tightly, as though it were the only thing anchoring her to the world. Ethan stared. Tears stung his eyes, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper. For days, no water, no food, over 80 years old, and she was breathing. The extraction took 2 more hours. Every lift of a slab, every shift of a beam demanded a pause to check stability. The coordinator directed the team like a conductor. Slow here, brace there, listen for any groan from the pile. Paramedics waited at the edge, for bags ready, oxygen masks in hand. Ethan and Rex stood back. Ethan kept his eyes on the gap. Rex lay at his feet, head up, watching every movement. The dog's breathing stayed even, as though he understood the need for calm. Finally, 2 rescuers descended into the narrow opening. They worked with gloved hands and soft voices. "Easy now," one said. "We've got you." The woman stirred faintly. Her eyelids fluttered. They lifted her inch by inch. When her shoulders cleared the rubble, the team exhaled as one. Carlos and Maria guided her onto a backboard. The paramedics moved in immediately, checking pulse, starting fluids, wrapping her in blankets. She weighed little more than a child, white hair tangled with dust, skin pale and dry. But her chest rose and fell. "Steady." The paramedic looked up at the coordinator. "Dehydrated severe, some cuts and bruises. Vitals holding. I don't know how she's this stable after 4 days." No one answered. They all looked at the statue still clutched in her arms. The ambulance pulled away with lights flashing, but no siren. The site fell quiet. Ethan watched until the vehicle disappeared around the bend. Then he turned to Rex. "You knew," he said quietly. "You always knew." Rex met his gaze and licked his hand once. The operation wrapped that afternoon. Crews packed gear. The coordinator shook Ethan's hand. "Good call. All of it." Ethan nodded. "Team call." He loaded Rex into the truck and drove straight to the hospital. He had no real reason to go, no connection to the woman, but he needed to see her through. At the desk, he asked for the survivor from the collapse. The nurse glanced up. "You're with the rescue team?" "The dog handler," Ethan said. She smiled faintly. "She's been asking for you." "The man with the dog." Ethan followed her down the hall. The room sat at the end, door half open. Afternoon light slanted through the window. Monitors beeped softly. The woman lay propped on pillows. For lines ran to her arm. Her eyes opened when he stepped in. "You're the one with the dog," she said. Her voice rasped, but clear. "That's me. Ethan. The dog's Rex." "Rex," she repeated. Strong name. For a strong soul. He pulled a chair close and Saturday. "How are you feeling, ma'am?" "Margaret," she corrected. "And better than I should be. Thanks to him." And her. She touched the statue on the bedside table. Ethan waited. If she wanted to talk, she would. Margaret looked at him steadily. "I've lived in that building 23 years. Since my husband died. No children. No close family. Just me, my books, and my prayers." She paused, took a sip from a cup. "That morning I woke with a heaviness. Like the air pressed down. I thought of leaving, visiting a friend from church. I packed a few things. Papers. Photos of Thomas." She nodded at the statue. "And her. This came from my grandmother. Over a century old. Passed down through the women in my line." Ethan glanced at it. Porcelain. Faded blue cloak. Gold leaf on the crown. The face held a quiet strength. "I set her on the table in the living room. Then the world ended." Margaret closed her eyes. Noise like thunder. Then nothing. When I came to, I lay wedged in darkness. Arm pinned. Couldn't move. But I still held her against me. That much I knew. Ethan leaned forward. "The 4 days. How did you?" "At first I waited to sleep and not wake. I'm 82. I've had a full life. If it was time, I accepted it." She opened her eyes. "But I heard you all up there. Voices. Machines. It gave me something to hold on to." She fell silent. Ethan stayed quiet. On the 3rd day she came. Ethan felt the room still. I know it sounds like fever talk, Margaret said, but I was clear-headed. Thirst burned, but my mind stayed sharp. Then a light grew, soft at first, like dawn through curtains. In the center stood a woman, mantle blue as the sea, face kind, like a mother's. It was her, the Virgin Mary. What did she say? Ethan asked. Margaret's lips curved. Don't fear, child. You're not alone. Hold on a little longer. Help is near. Ethan swallowed. After that, the thirst eased. The pain dulled. Not gone, but distant. Her words carried me, gave me peace. Margaret studied him. The rescuers said the machines missed me, but your dog found the spot. How? Rex indicated it exactly. Barked. Dug. Wouldn't leave. First time he ever ignored a command. Tears welled in her eyes. She reached for his hand. He didn't act alone. She guided him to me. I felt it. Ethan held her hand. Words failed him. An 82-year-old widow, buried 4 days, saved by a dog's instinct and a mother's promise. He had no answer, only the truth of it. He stayed another half hour. They spoke of small things, the hospital coffee, Rex's habit of stealing socks, the way Delaware autumn turned the fields gold. When he stood to leave, Margaret squeezed his hand. Tell Rex thank you, and that I'll pray for him. Every day. I will, Ethan said. Outside, in the parking lot, he sat in the truck without starting it. Rex waited in the back seat, head tilted. Ethan scratched his ears. She's right, you know. You're something else. That night, Ethan knelt by his bed for the first time in years. He was no churchgoer. Science and hard work had shaped him, but he spoke anyway. Thanked for Rex. For Margaret. For the pull that kept them digging when everything said stop. And he asked, quietly, for guidance in the searches to come. Margaret healed slowly. Weeks in the hospital, then therapy to rebuild strength. A woman from her parish took her in. The old building was gone. So were her belongings. All but the statue. Ethan visited twice. The second time he brought Rex. Margaret lit up. She knelt, stiffly, and wrapped her arms around the dog. My guardian, she whispered. Rex stayed still, letting her hold him. Months later, Margaret moved to a small apartment in a quieter neighborhood. Simpler than before, but hers. She placed the statue on a shelf by the window. Church friends visited more often now. Her story spread in whispers. The woman who held Mary through the dark. She waved it off. It wasn't me. It was trust. Hers and mine. Ethan and Rex worked 2 more years. They found others, a family after a flood, a hiker in a storm. Lives saved, but none carried the weight of that October. None shifted Ethan so deep. He never turned devout. No weekly Massachusetts. No rosary beads. But he started seeing room for more. Mysteries beyond the measurable. Rex retired at 9. Joints slowed him. He spent days on the couch, chasing squirrels from the yard, begging for table scraps. Ethan watched him with new eyes. 1 year to the day, Margaret called. Come celebrate. Just a small gathering. Bring Rex. Ethan arrived at a friend's house. 15 people, mostly from her parish. Cake, coffee, laughter over shared stories. When Rex walked in, heads turned. Margaret knelt again. There's my hero. Rex licked her cheek. Later, in the garden, she pulled Ethan aside. Sunset painted the sky in soft oranges. One more thank you, she said, for believing when it didn't add up. You don't owe me, Ethan replied. Yes, I do. You trusted Rex. And Rex trusted something larger. That's faith. Not the loud kind, but the quiet one that acts. She paused, looked at him fully. In 83 years, I learned this. Faith means stepping forward when you can't see the path. You did that, and it brought me here. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Thank you, Margaret, for showing me miracles aren't just stories. Before he left, she extended an invitation. Join our prayer group to the Virgin Mary. People from all over gather online, united in faith. If it calls to you, click below. Become part of it. Pray with us. And if you stayed to the end, do this. Comment Rex, the name of the dog who wouldn't quit when all hope seemed gone. Let me see how many believe miracles walk among us still. Share your own story of grace below. A healing, a timing too perfect. Pass this on to someone needing light today. May the Virgin Mary watch over you and yours. Amen.